And so I think one has to see the recent actions that Israel has taken to expand the war beyond Gaza, right? That's what they've really done. So before I come to the Iranian missile attack, we'll go through the last month or so. They effectively started to signal to the world that they're going to expand the war from Gaza to the northern front, vis-a-vis Lebanon, against Hezbollah about a month ago.
How? How did they signal?
Well, I mean, you had the defense minister going down to Gaza, speaking to a unit, saying the center of gravity of operations are going to shift north now, and then they published that on media.
What's happening in the Gaza Strip?
Gaza Strip is now a lower intensity of operations. I mean, effectively think of it as a mop-up stage. Hamas has largely been degraded, and you don't have active, constant fighting or bombardment going on anymore. Instead, you're trying to kind of ferret out the last tunnels and the last hideouts and the last pockets of resistance, while also trying to now potentially start to think about a reconstruction for the civilian population, because it's still there. The civilian population is still very much in Gaza, right? The Israelis have managed to get them to move back up to northern Gaza once the center of operations moved to that Egyptian border. So over the last couple of months, basically the Gaza pace of operations has reduced, which has given Israel the opportunity and the capacity to say, okay, phase 1 is done. Phase 2, Hezbollah needs to start. And so they started phase 2 through what I'm sure, you and the viewers were as enthralled by as the rest of the world, with this mysterious pager attack that felt like something out of, a sci-fi movie. I don't know if you've tracked that in detail, Ranveer. Unbelievable story. I mean, think about this, right? First, because of the penetrability of the modern smartphone, Hezbollah decides that the Israelis will be able to track our smartphones too easily. So for our senior officers, we can't use smartphones. So they put out a call saying, please cease using smartphones, and we're going to seek out pagers, because low tech is more secure tech. Much harder to penetrate, etc., etc. Clearly, Mossad at some point heard that Hezbollah had made this decision, had some intel as to who they were trying to source the pagers from. And in what can only be called, one of those novel-worthy intelligence operations, it seems, from the reporting that I've read, that Mossad set up a shell company in Hungary, used that company to take on licensed production of a Taiwanese pager design, produce the pagers necessary for the Hezbollah order. So Hezbollah is now dealing with Mossad and they don't even know. They don't even know that their suppliers are now Mossad. Introduced a tiny amount of explosive into every single pager. Wired it such that the explosive would go off upon receipt of a particular signal. And then actually delivered 3,000 pagers to Hezbollah. And the world, nobody knows anything about this. And then most recently what I've heard is that they actually went earlier than they wanted to, Ranveer. So the original plan was that these pagers would go off once the Israeli ground invasion of southern Lebanon had commenced. So imagine that. All of the Hezbollah, 3,000 Hezbollah officers have come south. They're ready with their troops to commence this war. And suddenly everyone's pagers start blowing up. So right on the battlefield, you have 3,000 casualties that now need to be evacuated. So they had some information that Hezbollah may be suspicious. And so they detonated the pagers because it was a use it or lose it moment, right? I mean, we have them, let's use them. So it started with the pagers, which was a decapitating attack, Ranveer, because 3,000 middle-ranking officers, that's the beating heart of your 100,000-man army. The 3,000 guys that are going to be on the ground leading your troops in combat, making those decisions, keeping the team together, etc., right? Small unit combat. So you've taken out basically Hezbollah's middle management. They're all in hospital, missing hands and fingers and legs and eyes and things like that. The second day, immediately after that, they took out all of their walkie-talkies. So that took out another few hundred officers. Few days after that, they start hitting all of the known missile silos and rocket silos that they have in southern Lebanon and all the other infrastructure that they have. And a few days after that, they took out the most devastating attack yet. They fired 80 bunker-busting bombs at the Hezbollah headquarters once they had confirmed intelligence that Hassan Nasrallah was in the building, and took out the chief of Hezbollah, right? So you can see that, and then they've taken out, by the way, the successor and then his successor. So anyone that becomes chief of Hezbollah gets targeted now. That's the Israeli position. They haven't targeted Nasrallah even once in the last 30 years. What's changed, right, for Israel? They've suddenly, I think, made a decision, Ranveer, to say, this is the last war that we ever fight. They've thrown caution to the winds. They've said we're no longer interested in nuanced and sophisticated geopolitical analysis. We're no longer interested in America is pressuring, Europe is saying please stop, New York Times says there's been too much, collateral damage. We are going to deal with our enemies in a permanent way. Now, is that possible? Is it an impossible task they've taken for themselves? Can you never defeat an idea? And even if you kill Hamas, will the next generation of, fighters still get motivated because of all the civilian damage that you've done? All of these are very reasonable points. And I'm not justifying the Israeli position. I'm just trying to reveal to your viewers or to the audience, Ranveer, that I think this is an Israel that is now no longer willing to back down. Which brings us to the 180 ballistic missiles that Iran fired at Israel. See, a few months ago, after Israel hit the Iranian embassy in Damascus, remember there was a lot of tension and the Iranians had launched a missile strike that time as well. Both times, the effectiveness of these mass missile strikes is very low. 99% of them end up getting taken out by a combination of Israel's allies in the region, the United States, Israel's own anti-air defense. And finally, if a few missiles reach the airspace of Israel, then you have Iron Dome. And if it goes through Iron Dome, then you have this thing called David Sling, which is the other system that they have.
How does it work?
It's what we were talking about earlier, right? An anti-air system.
Okay.
So whether you're trying to target an aircraft or an incoming missile, your task becomes harder because the missile is usually moving faster, but it's also slightly easier because the missile isn't weaving. It's going to come straight towards its target, right? It all comes down to the physics of ballistics, Ranveer, where basically a computer needs to do a lot of calculations on exactly what direction and speed or velocity at which something needs to be fired from the ground to take an object out in the air before it strikes its own target. And what Iron Dome is the most sophisticated version of an anti-air, defense system. The reason it's called a dome is because it's so sophisticated that it's able to cover all of Israeli airspace to near perfection, where they can say 99% of objects will end up getting shot out of the sky when they come near Israeli airspace. That's a tall claim. What's happened historically is that Israel has been held to a higher standard because of the fact that they're a democracy and they're technologically advanced. So people have been judging the proportionality of their responses to the effectiveness of the attacks. So think about it, in very simple terms. Hezbollah fires 500 attacks a day. If they're the equivalent of loud firecrackers because Iron Dome keeps taking them out, and they're very crude, very low quality rockets that are being fired, no civilian casualties actually occurring in Israel, most people are like, leave it. No, don't respond, right? You didn't actually get hit, right? Like someone came to punch you, but they missed because they're so, bad at it. Don't respond might be what a bystander says. Leave it, Ranveer. Israel is now no longer going to leave it. Israel is going to say, what if I didn't have Iron Dome? Or what if one day you fire so many missiles that Iron Dome does fail? You can ultimately saturate any system, right? There is a limit to the number of objects that Iron Dome can take out simultaneously. So if every nation in the Middle East, including Iran, said, every last missile in our arsenal now we're going to fire at the same time, and 5,000 projectiles come towards Israel, so every chance that Iron Dome gets saturated and fails, and the last 1,000, after the first 4,000 come and take out Israel. So Israel saying, boss, I am no longer now going to be judged by the effectiveness of your attacks. I'm going to respond basis the intent of your attacks. So if Hezbollah fires 500 rockets, Israel will also fire 500 missiles, but 500 out of 500 of the Israeli missiles will meet their targets, and maybe none of the Hezbollah rockets will. The reason I'm explaining that, Ranveer, is that this second attack that happened now, where a few missiles managed to get through as well, Israel will respond. Israel will not, I believe, sit back and say, we managed to defend it anyways, so what difference? And so I think that, unfortunately, we are on the verge of a direct and pretty brutal strike by Israel. On what? I don't know. How? When? As they say, we will respond at a time and place of our own choosing. It's a favorite line of our armed forces as well. They really mean it. They will respond at a time and place of their own choosing. But the response, so 2 days ago, Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, said, our attack will be lethal, precise, and surprising. which was a very surprising word to use, right? The word surprising. So I don't know whether it's like another pager-style attack or, taking out their nuclear facilities or taking out, IRGC headquarters, but some sort of response is expected.
Just for context, I think we're recording this on the 10th of October, 11th. It's the 11th of October as we speak.
Yeah, and so it's been a few days since that attack, and I think that the world's sort of been holding its breath as to what does Israel do next. Of course, it's continued to operate in Lebanon, so that is going on as we speak. They haven't yet responded to Iran openly launching 180 missiles at it. Now, when that happens, what the knock-on effects and consequences of that are, i.e., what's the nature of the Israeli response? And then what's the nature of the Iranian response to that response? And how does Russia react? And how does the United States react? And how does the wider Sunni part of the Middle East react? And, what happens in Syria? And what happens in Lebanon after that? I mean, all of these become... And this is really the risk in geopolitics, right? That you do something and you really can't predict the consequences of what you've just done, right? And what that sort of chain reaction of events is going to be going forward. So I wouldn't disagree overall with a view that we could be on the brink of something major in the Middle East. And unfortunately, something that I've been thinking about in the last couple of years, Ranveer, is, when Hitler first invaded Czechoslovakia or Austria, before the invasion of Poland, and even when he conducted the invasion of Poland, I wonder if people realized that World War II had begun. And instead, I wonder if, we look back 10 years from now and ask ourselves whether the first battles of World War III were fought on the battlefields of Ukraine and Gaza or something,
Been speaking about this for a while on all our geopolitics podcasts. Seeming to me like this is the beginning of World War III. I asked some other experts about this. No one gave me an out-and-out accurate answer. Everyone was like, it's unpredictable at this point.
If I may, Ranveer, what's even more interesting to me is how desensitized civilian society all over the world has become to constant global conflict and risk. It feels surreal to me the extent to which people in Bombay or Tokyo or London or Madrid or New York or San Francisco will go about their daily lives despite the fact that there's a major European war on and a major Middle Eastern war on. It feels surreal to me that markets will continue to climb. It feels surreal to me that economic activity will continue to operate as if nothing's changed, while major conflict continues to accelerate and expand on our planet. And so, if you go back even 50, 60 years, a major conflict would cause an immediate chain reaction in the markets. News about a Middle Eastern, war would immediately cause oil prices to shoot and equities to drop and, everyone to go long dollar as a insurance policy. You see none of it now. And so a very interesting question is, what's changed? I mean, is it that socially we've all become so inured to conflict that we're comfortable living in a reality where, we're eating at Zuma or Hakkasan and a few hundred kilometers away, Hamas and the IDF are at it. Or, you're in Paris or Berlin attending a rave and you travel a few hundred kilometers to the east and the Ukrainian battlefield is alive and well, right? So is it because of social changes, political changes, technology, social media? It just feels very surreal to me that we might be at the beginning of World War III, but it's all, the music's still on, as it were.
Hey, if you enjoyed this clip from The Ranveer Show, we've uploaded a ton of other clips related to a ton of other topics. So explore the channel because there's something for everyone.